This project was a very different kind of an animal. You know, it was somewhat similar. It was still looking at my general area of concern, which is the relationship between art and politics. But in this case, I want to tell you a little bit about the structure of this book. Because I was not interested in writing either a literary history or an art history, and I certainly was not writing a religious studies book, it was a little bit of all of that, and I was still very much, as I am now, a cultural studies scholar. What I decided to do was to pay attention to this body of work, which was the work of over 40 artists in various media, visual arts of various sorts, including film, but also comic book, also interactive CD-ROM, spoken word, plays. You know, it was a big variety of post-60s work, but especially the work of like 85 through 2000. So it was a really huge body of work, and the question was, how do I organize that? And that was scary. There was a moment of like real fright, like, wow, this is a huge archive. And suddenly though, and it wasn't sudden, there was a process, it really dawned on me that the things that kept on recurring in that body of work were ways to organize it without forcing a structure that felt safer to me. And that's what I did. So spirituality, by the way, was, as I was indicating in the introduction of what I read to you today, I did not plan on studying spirituality. I thought it was an incredibly dangerous field. But it kept on recurring in this work of feminists that kept on talking about, of course, gender, race, sexuality, class. You know, I was really wanting to fill a void, to do this kind of historical, you know, archive, and to create a permanent archive by which other people could really benefit, to start really broadening those canons that people have been talking about forever, you know, and maybe had good intention but didn't have like deep resources or knowledgeable, careful readings of how to understand work that was drawing on Western and non-Western aesthetics and spiritual philosophical worldviews. So the way that I ended up organizing this was by simply thinking about the structure of an altar, and how on an altar we put things that are important to us. If we're non-religious, we just call them important. If we are religious or spiritual, then we openly call them sacred things. They could be like, you know, something from the prom, from your niece or your own, or they could be a family photograph, they could, you know, whatever. It could be a series of sacred objects. When I looked at it that way, I saw that there were themes that kept on recurring, and so I organized it according to those sacred objects. And during that process, I also, because I was immersed in different kinds of arts, I really began to, investigate this form of the altar, especially because the altar was being reclaimed in many feminist artists' work, by the way, but also very much in Chicana arts, as a kind of a crossover from like the family altar, perhaps on top of the TV set or on top of the bureau, into, and from out of the church and the chapel, or you know, whatever the different religious traditions were, into an art form. So there actually was an art form then that was called, and is called, an altar installation. And so it's in the process of thinking about that, and this is a reproduction that I pulled out of Art in America. And what it is it's a photograph of what one Chicana artist's installation looked like. And so it was an entire gallery that she had installed, including with drapes, you know, on the ceilings and on the walls, and a great number of objects. And it really made me think about space, you know, and it made me think about how writing itself is also a space. That when we write a book of whatever type, even if it's the kind of most traditional type of scholarship, we are inviting people to enter into a space that we are crafting. And it isn't as simple as we're allowing them to enter into our own mind. In some ways, of course, we are. But it's a different kind. It is not necessarily a confession, right? This is my mind, these are my feelings, but it is something we craft. And I took that very seriously when I thought about the structure, which is another way of talking about my methodology, part of my methodology of writing it up. You know, and I was very aware of what I wanted readers to experience. And by the way, that also helped me in how I dealt with theory. You know, it was the heyday of high theory, and it meant a great deal to be able to manage all of these, you know, really scintillating thinkers. But I did do like serious translation because I wanted it to be a little more accessible you know. So that had to do with my imagining my book as a space, a three-dimensional space, you know, that is real in terms of, you know, an ideological and intellectual, you know, project. And finally, I think what I want to say is that, you know, I brought this along to kind of, you know, remind myself that, and to remind you that, that how you begin writing a dissertation and how you structure it, it's the same as the way you begin and write any other book, and it's like being able to listen and pay attention to your ideas that sometimes are fleeting and sometimes really feel like intuitions, you know, that sometimes are stimulated by something you saw in a film, or something you talked about, or something you overheard. You know, sometimes there are these snippets that are very haunting. In fact, they stay with you, and so for me, I think some of the richest things that came out of this book were in fact being able to pay attention and to keep it in a journal. And you know, in a different talk, I was telling others and Gloria that when I started to write this, instead of having a bunch of different journals, you know, I started to keep one journal, just one, where I put my notes, my scholarly notes, going to talks, but also my creative note-taking. And that really helped me to integrate, because I had a variety of different sides, and it helped me kind of practice what I wanted to do. I wanted to practice a kind of thinking that was less divisive for me as a person, less theory, scholarship over here, private life over here. You know, so it was an experiment, and I gave myself permission to do that, and it ended up being really a wonderful experiment. You know, of being able to have all those wonderful things in one space, and it also involved, this book, not only snippets of dreams, interpretation, books that were legit to the Academy and books that weren't, but it also involved allowing myself to imagine the book. So I have an early book proposal here. The book ended up being something else. And that is part of the process that I think sometimes we're afraid of. I think sometimes you're like, but wait, how do I apply for that grant? Or wait, this isn't what I said I'd do. But as in all creative processes, once you're in it, you know, you discover different things. And so you're not bound by your honest envisioning of what your project is going to be. It's really just a roadmap that may change. And that, in fact, I hope it does change, because I think that would reflect all of this really wonderful, cool stuff happening, your own originality, your own voice. The final thing that I'll say, and I brought these little props with me because I forgot the real thing at home, is, and I'm also working on a new project right now, and at any rate, it's how I organized the dissertation in this book and the new one, is that it was really important. Oh, the other thing about this is I could imagine this is the book. This is the skeleton of the book, or the soul of the book. Actually, I think it was the soul of the book. The skeleton of the book happened by when I finished doing all of the reading, all of the interviews, all of the collection of visual materials. I have huge archives. When I finished all of that, I put them into different file folders. I know you deal with it differently. I still like this, because I still like being able to open and to have it all in one space, and me to be able to rifle through it. And then putting it into a binder and making up a really snazzy, exciting, bold title. This just says Heart's title, a heart-mind title. Something that is exciting to you, you know, and not just... My dissertation title is actually very dry. Proyectos y contextos de la vanguardia nicaragüense literaria, 1927 a 1930, whatever it was, 32. Projects and contexts of the Nicaraguan literary avant-garde, projects and contexts, right? I mean, so, you know, but anyway, I say, collect it, keep it where you can see it, and then when you are really ready, you write. A lot of people, I know that, and Carla may have different advice, a lot of people have a different style of writing. I am not one of those people who says I'm always writing, because I'm not. I am a person who's always thinking, taking notes, actively working. You know, I view it like a stew, a rich, rich stew. And when I'm ready to write, I sit and I write. You know, I wrote my dissertation over a 3-month period. You know, I wrote one chapter of my book, Alterities, one day. You know, I mean, but you have to have all your research done, all of it. And you have to review all your notes, you know. and really be ready. So, but it's okay if you have a different method. The point is, know what your method is so that you don't compare yourselves with others and say, but so-and-so is always writing. That's fine, but I can't work that way because I work with so many footnotes. I have to have it really fresh when I sit to write. So I sit to write having reviewed every scrap and having made furthermore an abstract of all the notes. And then I write. And that's a process where I trust that. And I write quite a lot, you know. I have a lot of writings that I presented at conferences and, you know, I'm constantly working with in different ways that have been published but not in these forms. So anyway, Carla, you know, I don't want to take more time than that. I hope that that's useful and I hope we have some time for Q&A.